The first cut was small, no wider than a thumbnail, but it bled like a faucet that wouldn't shut off. It streaked crimson across Everett Vance's forearm, dripping onto the clean, light blue composite floor of the Interspecies Academy lab. "Ah, crap," Everett muttered, clutching his arm. The class froze. 14 heads turned toward him, elongated, scaled, furred, or smooth, each belonging to a different species from across the Xyroth coalition. Only Everett stood out, the lone human exchange student from Earth, here on a full academic grant. He had been dissecting a transparent-limbed Zarnian plant worm with an overly enthusiastic scalpel stroke when he'd slipped. Professor Aldrich, a tall, gelatinous being with a subtle yellow hue, floated forward, its many ocular nodes focusing on the blood. "Medical emergency," Aldrich said, voice rising in pitch. "Containment protocols?" No, it's fine," Everett said, raising his hand and immediately regretting it as blood dripped faster. "I just need a bandage." Panic erupted. Sulo, a six-limbed Relakian with a habit of narrating everything he saw, clutched his datapad to his chest. "He is leaking vital fluids. He is dying." "I am not dying," Everett said with growing frustration. "Do you require a final message?" asked Petri, a soft-spoken Myanari whose translucent skin shimmered with alarm. Several students began whispering funeral rites in their native tongues. One started a low humming chant. Everett looked at Aldrich, who was now placing a call through the emergency console. "Please, it's a scratch. I just need something to stop the bleeding." Aldrich did not respond. A moment later, the lab doors hissed open, and 2 medical staff from the Coalition's health unit rushed in. One with a med scanner, the other with a container labeled Hemostasis Emergency Kit Category 7. Everett groaned. He was escorted, none too gently, to the infirmary wing. The gurney had been designed for species with more limbs and fewer complaints, so his legs dangled awkwardly off the side. The medical scanner beeped ominously for reasons he suspected were unrelated to his condition. "Can someone just give me a bandage?" Everett asked again. "You are experiencing fluid loss," said the taller medic, a bipedal Circe named Rorik, while passing the scanner over his arm. "Your internal pressure is decreasing. This is critical. It's not that much fluid. Humans bleed. It's normal." Rorik paused. "You are aware of this phenomenon?" "Yes," Everett said. "It's called a cut. It happens. It's not great, but it's not deadly. I mean, it can be, but not this one." The shorter medic, a Tazine named Hura, looked bewildered. "You do not require plasma replacement?" "No." "You do not wish to be sedated?" "Definitely not." "Do you wish to give testimony in case of demise?" Everett sat up. "Can I speak to someone from Earth?" "Earth liaison is unavailable at present," Rorik replied. Hura delicately pulled a soft wrap from the emergency kit and began applying it to his arm. The wrap was thick and pulsing faintly, which Everett found deeply unsettling. "Can I just get a normal cloth bandage? Gauze? Adhesive strip?" Hura's eyes blinked in a slow, uncertain pattern. "Primitive analgesic covering?" "Yes." "That?" 3 hours later, Everett was released with a bulky, glowing purple wrap around his forearm and a warning not to strain his circulatory system. He trudged back to his quarters exhausted. When he opened the door, his roommate, a pale-skinned, dome-headed Lethari named Jex, jumped back in alarm. "You live?" "Yes, Jex. I live." "There was blood." "There still is," Everett muttered, pulling off the glowing wrap and replacing it with a basic cloth strip he'd brought from Earth. "It's not like I lost a limb." Jex stared. "You mean this is common? Getting a cut?" "Sure." "Does it regenerate?" "No, it just heals. Slowly." Jex sat on his sleeping platform, clearly disturbed. "But we were told that fluid loss in humans was fatal." "Well, it can be. But not all bleeding is the same. There's levels. Minor, moderate, severe. This was minor." Jex tilted his head. "And you knew this from your own biology?" "Yes." "Without a specialist?" Yes. Jack stood, then sat again. There is so much about your species I do not understand. The next day, Everett returned to the lab with his arm properly bandaged. He expected things to go back to normal. They didn't. Petrie approached him before the lab session began, holding a small box. I studied human blood retention techniques, she said. This is a compression wrap I made from temperature-neutral fibers. Would you like it? Everett blinked. Thanks, but I've got it covered. Sulo was next, holding out a sketchpad full of diagrams. I have mapped the circulatory escape patterns of your blood from the wound site. If you would like to cross-reference it for accuracy, I'm good, Everett said. By midday, he had been offered 5 prototype bandages, a hardened fluid barrier dome that looked like a salad bowl, and 1 small-scale force field generator calibrated to contain red fluid. Professor Aldrich tried to resume the lesson, but each time Everett so much as touched a tool, the class flinched. One student, an Everett from the outer colonies, refused to sit within 3 meters of him. In the following days, rumors spread. Whispers in the corridor spoke of the human who survived hemorrhage, and someone titled him the Red Survivor in a student comms thread. Everett found himself fielding bizarre questions during lunch. Do your limbs fall off if you bleed too much? Can you still operate machinery with less than 80% blood? Is the color red always associated with death? He tried to explain, but his answers never seemed to satisfy. When a student from the aquatic moon of Trelix fainted after watching Everett change his bandage in the cafeteria, the administration stepped in. Everett was summoned to the Chancellor's office. Chancellor Vulton, a rigid and metallic-skinned Drealith, sat behind a crescent-shaped desk, fingers steepled. Your injury has caused significant psychological disruption among our students. I didn't mean to bleed, Everett said. Your physiology is incompatible with the expectations of many of our species. Some have filed for temporary reassignment from your shared courses. I can't stop having blood, Everett said. That's kind of a default human setting. Indeed. However, to ease tensions, we request that you refrain from exposing injury in public spaces. You mean hide bleeding? Yes. That's not exactly something I can schedule. Nevertheless, discretion is advised. Everett nodded slowly. Maybe a seminar would help. A seminar? Yeah. I can explain basic human biology. What's normal, what's dangerous. Maybe once people understand, they'll stop acting like I'm a walking death trap. Vulton considered this. An educational approach may prove effective. You may proceed. The seminar was scheduled for the following week. Everett prepared a presentation with diagrams, simple animations, and examples of minor injuries and their treatments. Jex helped field the more extreme questions ahead of time to avoid panic. The turnout was larger than expected. Over 80 students filled the hall, many of them wearing protective gear or holding translation tablets to better understand the material. Everett stood at the front, a little sweaty, bandage still on his arm. Okay, he began. Today we're going to talk about bleeding. A ripple of unease passed through the crowd. Minor bleeding, he added. He activated the first slide, a cartoon human with a paper cut. This happens a lot. Paper, tools, sometimes even plants. It hurts, but it's not dangerous. He clicked through images. Scraped knees, kitchen knife slips, stubbed toes. Now this, he said, pointing to a photo of a deep gash, is serious. This requires stitches or surgical closure. But again, not automatically fatal. Hands or their equivalent shot up. If your skin is breached, do your internal organs evacuate? No. Does your consciousness decrease with every drop? Not unless you lose a lot. So, how much can you lose? Everett paused. About 15% before major symptoms start. Around 40% is life-threatening. Gasps filled the room. But that's not common. Most injuries aren't anywhere close to that. By the end of the seminar, the mood had shifted. Students murmured to each other, sharing notes. Some seemed skeptical, others fascinated. After the session, Sulo approached him. I had no idea your species had evolved such tolerance for fluid loss. Well, Everett said, we didn't evolve to leak blood. We just evolved to survive it when it happens. Sulo nodded. It is. Admirable. Also deeply distressing. Everett laughed softly. Welcome to being human. The workshop room smelled faintly of sterilized resin and overcooked starch paste. It was late afternoon and the artificial lighting had dimmed to its softer cycle, casting a warm hue on the curved walls. Everett sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by an assortment of first aid kits from various worlds. There was a box shaped like a sea urchin that dispensed antiseptic mist, a jelly sack that pulsed rhythmically and supposedly detected pain through smell, and something that looked suspiciously like a pastry but claimed to be a regenerative poultice. Jex hovered by the door, watching warily as Everett peeled open a simple earth gauze pad and pressed it to a new, shallow scrape on his shin. You did that on purpose, Jex said, eyes narrowing. No, I really didn't, Everett replied, holding the gauze in place with one hand while reaching for tape with the other. I hit the corner of your foot warmer. Again. I told you it retracts automatically. Not fast enough. Jex folded his arms, or rather, crossed his upper limbs while letting the lower two twitch nervously. You're bleeding again. Yes, but I'm not planning a repeat performance of last week's melodrama. I was not melodramatic. I was alarmed. Everett secured the gauze and rolled down his pant leg. Well, I'm fine. Again. Jex didn't respond. Instead, he walked over to a nearby console and tapped in a command. A holographic projection sprang up, displaying a rotating 3D model of the human cardiovascular system. You said your blood moves constantly. Yeah, that's kind of the whole point. Then how is it not escaping all the time? Because of skin. And vessels. And clotting. You know, platelets? Jex's eyes flickered. We don't have that function. When we leak fluid, it's an emergency. You just plug holes like it's a minor inconvenience. Everett stood and stretched, wincing slightly as he shifted his weight. It is most of the time, unless it's somewhere important, like the neck, or inside your head. Then it's very not fine. Jex looked at him for a long moment. Your entire species evolved anticipating frequent structural damage. That's one way to put it. The door hissed open and a new figure entered, tall and cloaked in layered thermal wraps. Its face was mostly hidden beneath a breathing mask. It moved with deliberate care, as though gauging the stability of the floor. Is this the human? It asked, voice filtered through the mask. Depends who's asking, Everett replied. The being lowered its hood, revealing a wide, pale face with no obvious eyes, just a faint shimmer of light beneath a translucent surface. It touched a small device on its neck and exhaled slowly. I am Dran, it said. I have come to verify the claims made during the seminar. Everett blinked. Claims? Yes. That you can self-repair from fluid loss without mechanical assistance. I mean, yeah. But I'm not doing a demonstration. I brought a sample for comparative study, Dran said, pulling a container from beneath its cloak. Inside floated a gelatinous orb the size of a fist, suspended in amber fluid. Jex leaned in. Is that a Vexler gland? Yes, Dran said. It is used in some species to regulate internal pressure. When damaged, it requires immediate cryostasis. Everett looked between the gland and Dran. Okay, and you do not possess such a gland, and yet you survive pressure breaches. I wish to understand how. Everett sighed. You're not going to poke me with something sharp, are you? Dran tilted its head. Not unless invited. Then I guess we're good. Dran moved to a nearby station and began arranging its equipment. Jex stepped closer to Everett and whispered pointlessly, as Dran clearly lacked ears. Why do they care so much? Because they don't believe it, Everett said. They think I'm either lying or hiding some tech. Dran activated a scanner and pointed it toward Everett's leg. A faint hum filled the room. You have no synthetic implants. Nope. No dermal reinforcement. Not unless you count calluses. You are. Unnervingly organic. Everett laughed. Thanks. I think. Dran turned off the scanner and sat, folding its limbs beneath it with a fluid grace. I would like to conduct a controlled trial. Define controlled. I simulate a minor laceration on an out tissue. Then you demonstrate your response technique. Everett considered. As long as the tissue's not from anything sentient, fine. Dran nodded and unsealed a second container. Inside was a slab of synthetic bioskin embedded with fluid channels. It resembled a thick slice of uncooked tofu with blue veins. This is calibrated to mimic your vascular pressure, Dran said. I have been studying your physiology since the seminar. Jex looked impressed. You did all this in 2 days? I do not like uncertainty, Dran replied. The trial began. Dran made a shallow incision in the pseudo-flesh, which immediately oozed red-tinted synthetic fluid. Everett stepped forward, took a clean piece of gauze, applied pressure, then taped it down. There, he said. Basic first response. You apply pressure, elevate if needed, and wait for clotting. Dran watched silently for a moment, then reached for a sensor. The fluid retention rate is 93%. Adequate. That's the goal. Stop the bleeding. Let the body handle the rest. Jex leaned in. And you do this without any neural override? Nope. Just practice. Dran stood. Your species is unreasonably robust. Thanks. This information must be disseminated. Too many believe your biology is unstable or volatile. It is simply chaotic with intent. I'll put that on a t-shirt. Dran closed the containers and prepared to leave. I will submit a report to the Interspecies Health Council. They will likely request further demonstrations. Great, Everett muttered, looking forward to being the coalition's bleeding mascot. Dran paused by the door. Next time, try not to injure yourself. It causes considerable disruption. I'll do my best. After Dran left, Jex sat down beside Everett. You're going to be famous. I was already infamous. This is worse. Jex considered. They might offer you a research fellowship. I came here to study engineering, not teach interstellar first aid. Well, Jex said, eyes flickering, you're doing both now. 3 days later, Everett was summoned to the Coalition's Department of Biological Variants. The building was shaped like an inverted pyramid, each level smaller than the one below, giving it the appearance of a structure balanced on a point. A design Everett found deeply unsettling. He was met by 3 representatives, a feathered Yulari with a surgical visor, a 4-eyed Cattell in a mobility tank, and a serpentine Red Han who coiled around a central podium. Human Everett Vance, the Yulari said. We have reviewed Dran's report. Good. Are we done? Not yet. We wish to propose a safety integration initiative. Everett frowned. You want to integrate human safety protocols? No. We wish to integrate you. Into what? A cross-species resilience study. You would serve as the baseline specimen. I'm not a specimen. Your biology is unique. It's not. There are billions of us. The Cattell's voice bubbled from the tank. Yes. But you are here. Everett took a breath. What are you actually asking me to do? The Red Hun uncoiled slightly. Demonstrate responses to environmental stressors. Controlled exposure. Monitored healing. Real-time data. You want me to get injured? On purpose. Minor stressors. Nothing permanent. Absolutely not. We can offer academic credit. I'm not bartering my blood for grades. The Yulari leaned forward. Then perhaps you can supervise. Everett blinked. What? We have synthesized replicas of your dermal structure. We will test them under various conditions. Your insight would ensure accuracy. Everett hesitated. You're not going to try to grow an actual human, right? Of course not. That would require permission from 3 planetary councils. Then I'll oversee. But I'm not bleeding for science. The Cattell gurgled. Understood. As Everett left the building, he passed a group of students clustered around a display screen. It played a looped animation of human wound care, complete with soothing narration and diagrams. A small sign beneath it read, Resilience, the Human Protocol. Everett tapped Jex's comm badge and sighed. They're making a whole exhibit now. What's it called? The Art of Not Falling Apart. The medical simulation dome buzzed faintly as Everett stepped inside, blinking against the shifting ambient light. The air was cool, sterilized, with a faint tang of synthetic citrus standard for coalition training zones. He was here under protest, mostly. Not that he'd said it out loud. There was a difference between resisting and being difficult. He didn't want to give the dean another reason to file a species incompatibility report. A tall, reptilian instructor with a cobalt spine stood near a pedestal adjusting the controls of a projection table. His name was Instructor Vel, and he hadn't looked away from the interface since Everett had entered. "You brought the requested items?" Vel asked without turning. Everett held up a small clear pouch. Standard Earth first aid kit. Gauze, tape, antiseptic, tweezers. Nothing fancy. Nothing dangerous. Definitely nothing that pulses or glows. Vel finally looked at him. "We will compare your tools to the Coalition's emergency response pack for dermal ruptures." "How thrilling," Everett muttered, setting the pouch on the table. "So what exactly am I doing here? I thought I made it clear I wasn't bleeding for data." "You are not the subject. The students are." He gestured across the room. A semicircle of alien cadets stood waiting, each with a notepad or scanner in hand. Most watched Everett with a mix of curiosity and apprehension. One, a squat creature with segmented eyes and leaf-like ears, blinked slowly and raised a hand. "Is it true your skin is composed of dead cells?" Everett sighed. "The outer layer, yeah. It's called the epidermis. It acts like armor. Sort of. Stops things from getting in. Or out." Another student, tall and covered in glistening chitin, tilted its head. "Then why does it split so easily?" "It's not designed for combat," Everett said. "It's designed to stretch, heal, and keep out bacteria. There's a trade-off." Vel activated the simulation platform. A life-sized model of a human arm appeared, pale with a faint dusting of hair. It rotated slowly, highlighting muscle groups and major vessels. Beside it, a second arm appeared scaled, greenish, with bulbous pressure sacs beneath the surface. "This," Vel said, "is a comparative model of a Dravali limb. Observe the fluid containment systems." Everett watched as the Dravali arm pulsed slightly, internal chambers contracting in rhythm. "That's impressive," he admitted. "Your version of veins? Pressure chambers. They collapse and seal when breached. Automatic containment. And yet," Vel said, looking at Everett now, "you survive without any such mechanism." A third model appeared, a human leg, scraped and bruised. A shallow wound glistened near the knee. "This is the test module," Vel said. "Each student will respond to the injury using both Coalition's standard protocol and your method. Then we compare outcomes." Everett folded his arms. "I hope that means using the kit, not copying the blood." Vel said nothing, which Everett took as reluctant agreement. The first student stepped forward. A blue-skinned Grelny, she approached the simulation with a trembling stylus. Everett watched as she activated the Coalition Medigel applicator, an orb that sprayed a fine mist over the wound, instantly forming a crystalline seal. "Efficient," Everett said, "but completely blocks airflow." "Is that bad?" she asked. "Depends on the wound. For something shallow, you want it to breathe. Traps less moisture, lowers infection risk." "Infection?" she repeated as if the word were archaic. "Yeah. You know, when bacteria get in and multiply. Pus, swelling, fever." Several students recoiled. "You don't have microbial exposure?" he asked. "Not on regulated campuses," Vel said. "Most species are inoculated against ambient threats." "Well, we're not. We've got bacteria everywhere. Inside and out. Most of it helps. Some of it tries to kill us." The second student, a soft-voiced being with 4 tentacles and no visible eyes, approached the model next. She studied Everett's kit with reverence. "This is adhesive?" "Yep. It sticks the gauze to your skin." She dabbed a corner of the tape against the simulation model, then wrapped the gauze haphazardly over the wound, leaving most of it exposed. "Not quite," Everett said. "You have to apply pressure first. Stop the bleeding, then cover it. Like this." He stepped forward and gently pressed the gauze down, then wrapped the tape snugly around the limb. Tight enough to hold. Not so tight it cuts circulation. The tentacled student nodded slowly. You rely on contact. Direct intervention. Pretty much always. After several more rounds, the students began rotating through both techniques. Some fumbled with the earth materials, others applied them too cautiously as though the gauze might bite. But they all tried. As the session neared its end, Vel turned to Everett. Would you permit a deeper demonstration? I already said no injury, but we would like you to respond to a complex scenario. You will be presented with a simulated trauma event and you must react as your people would. Without help. Correct. Everett hesitated. All right. Let's see it. The dome darkened. A new projection emerged. A human figure lying beside a twisted metal structure. Leg pinned beneath a beam. Blood pooled beneath the limb. The breathing was shallow, rapid. Everett stepped forward. Okay. First, check consciousness. He knelt beside the model. Hey, can you hear me? The simulation's eyes fluttered. Good. Responsive. That's a start. He reached for the beam and tested its weight. Too heavy to lift solo. All right, I need to stabilize the leg. He tore open the kit and pulled out a splint, 2 stiff rods, and a roll of bandaging. Splint the leg to keep the bone in place. Bleeding's coming from the thigh, so probably a femoral nick. We need a tourniquet. He dug through the pouch, wrapped a strip of cloth high around the thigh, and twisted it with a pen. That slows the bleeding. Not a permanent fix, but it buys time. He looked up. The room was silent. Then you call for help. You don't move them unless the area's dangerous. Keep them warm, keep them talking. That's how we do it. The simulation faded. Vel studied him. You treated the injury under pressure. With minimal tools. Without assistance. That's kind of the definition of first aid. Several students began murmuring among themselves, noting things down. Vel gestured toward the projection table. You may retrieve your kit. Everett picked it up, then turned to leave. One of the students, the one with orange ridges and a flat snout, called out. Do your people train for this? Some of us. Some learn at school. Some in the field. Some just wing it. And if you do it wrong, you learn. Or someone else does. The students were quiet again. Outside the dome, the corridor lights had dimmed for the evening cycle. Everett walked back to his quarters, the kit in hand, his shoulders sore from tension he hadn't noticed building. When he entered, Jex looked up from a console. You survived. Barely. What did they ask of you? Simulated trauma response. I splinted a hologram's leg and stopped it from bleeding out. Jex nodded thoughtfully. We had a saying back on Lethar. Those who survive the wound carry the knowledge of the blade. Catchy. Your survival instincts are not instinct. They are method. Ritual. Practice. Yeah, that's kind of the point. Jex tilted his head. Then perhaps that is what unsettles the others. Your resilience is not only in your body. It's in your preparation. Everett set the kit down. I think they're starting to get it. Jex tapped the console. You are now listed in the Coalition's open resource database as a practical authority on terrestrial trauma management. Everett groaned. So this is my legacy? Could be worse. I guess. I mean, no one fainted this time. Jex looked at him. That is progress. Everett sat on the edge of his bunk. You know, I came here to learn fusion drive dynamics, not teach wound care. Perhaps now you will be seen as more than a curiosity. Hopefully not as a hazard. Jex offered a rare, subtle grin. You are still a hazard. Just a better explained one. Everett laughed. I'll take it. That night, as he lay staring at the ceiling, the hum of distant machinery comforting in its constancy, he found himself oddly at peace. The panic had ebbed. The misunderstandings were fewer. And somewhere, in a dozen alien notebooks, his name was now associated not with bleeding, but with surviving. Which, all things considered, wasn't such a bad reputation to have.